Welcome to FOBtv, the future of business. I'm your host, Kevin Benedict, and I want to thank everyone out there for joining us today. My guest today is April Harris. April, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me on. This is so exciting.
Absolutely. Now, guys, she is part of every video. If you've ever watched an interview that you liked, it was probably because April did the editing and made me look far better than we actually were in that interview. Yeah, she's an artist. She's an artist. She has her own podcast called Art Talk with April, and she's plugged into lots of different artists. And I wanted her to join me today because there's a lot of discussion in the art world about, what's the impact of AI going to be? So April, again, thanks for joining us.
I'm excited to talk about it. There's so much going on. It's like, what all can I say,
So where are you calling in from today, April?
Birmingham, Alabama.
Birmingham. So if you couldn't detect that in her voice, it's Alabama. For those that haven't had the opportunity to meet you yet, April, why don't you just share a little bit about your journey as an artist?
Well, I've been an artist all of my life. I mean, ever since I was a child in kindergarten and everything. Went to school for graphic design. I've been an illustrator. I've been an art teacher in a junior high. I'm part of a lot of art associations and groups. Right now, I'm the communications chair of the Alabama Women's Caucus for Art. I've just been doing it for so long that there's a lot. I've done websites and video and painting and all of that as well. So right now I'm very interested in digital art, which kind of goes along with what we're talking about today.
So, and we'll get into this shortly, April. I detected when all these DallE and Open AI and Midjourney and all these different platforms came out, a little bit of fear in your voice when you saw this. We'll get to that here in just a minute. But before we do that, I want to just ask you, how do you define art? What's art to you?
Well, that is a huge question. I don't know that anybody truly has an answer for that, except for maybe their own personal experience and how they feel about it. And for me, it has a lot to do with communicating and expressing your feelings through imagery as a fine artist, but also, through music or stories or, even making a wonderful meal can be art. So, but I think essentially it boils down to communicating.
When you look at your life, who in your life encouraged you around art that made a meaningful difference in your life?
My high school art teacher. Absolutely. I think I had taken art classes with different tutors and things like that as a child, but when I took art in Prattville High School, her name is Susan Parker. She's retired now, but there was such a wonderful sort of program in high school that was almost at the level of college, and she created a community around it. And so she just always supported me and encouraged me and, helped me along the way. And I was really shy too. So I didn't like, being kind of the center of attention, And so that was one of those things I was really good at. And she let me know. And so that's my person.
That's awesome. I mean, many of us have that kind of a story, and it's good to bring those out and share with other people.
Absolutely.
Now, let me bring up an analogy, if you would. If you have a table full of food, some of it's protein, some of it's carbs, some of it's starches and fruits, they all do different things. Let's talk about art. What does art do for you?
Oh gosh, what does art do for me? Interesting question. Honestly, I find art for me is healing. It's sort of like my hobby or activity that I do a lot, like you would do your fishing that you do. and going out into nature and hiking and all that stuff. That's what art is for me. It's something where my husband and I, we joke about it all the time. He says, have you done any art lately? Because you're really irritable. Like, maybe I need to sit down and do something. Because it
Yeah,
just
but let me just say, my wife has never said, you're irritable. Shouldn't you be out fishing? I've just never heard that.
well, you need to tell her. So like, this makes me feel really good, and I think I'm less irritable.
That's too funny.
Then you get
So,
encouraged.
yes. So, what does it mean to be an artist, April? There's doing art, but then there's artist, or is artist anybody, or is artist something special or different?
I'm of the belief that anybody can be an artist. I tell my children who are 4 and 8 that they're artists. They're not professionals by any means, but it's one of those things where a lot of people are so caught up with the title of artist that they think it's magical and that it's something that makes them special or whatever. And it takes a lot of adults a long time to call themselves an artist because it's such a big word. It means, I don't know, it's up there with Van Gogh or Rembrandt or, Picasso. And so it can be really hard to call yourself an artist. But personally, I just feel like everyone has that capacity and that anything can be art in your life, from your fishing or cooking or how you paint a wall in your house can be art.
Mhm.
So I don't put too much weight on it.
So, artists have always used tools, from their canvas to their paints to everything, easels, and I don't know all the names of them, but all the tools that an artist may use in the digital world, in the watercolor world, and oil paint, all that kind of stuff, all different tools. So today we have a bunch of new tools coming out for artists. Everything from OpenAI's DallE and Gemini in their ability sometimes to generate art, and all the new ones that are out there. How are these tools the same or different?
Well, I think I'd like to point out the difference first. That's easiest for me to take note of. It's a tool that comes with its own intelligence. And so that is very different from, a paintbrush or going to the store and buying paints and things like that. But in the way that it's the same is that it's, especially at this point in generative AI, it's something that you still have to kind of mold and work with to get it to do what you need it to do, particularly in like commercial aspects where you're trying to capture a specific person in an infographic, for instance, or a specific scene in a video. You don't always get what you want in the very first prompt. So you got to keep, trying and don't give up on it and keep exploring it in order to try to get what you want. And I think that's very similar to what you would do with a drawing or a painting.
So, April, how often do you use generative AI today?
Gosh.
Monthly, weekly, daily, hourly?
Yeah, I think it's not daily. I would say like maybe every few days.
Okay.
When something occurs to me, I ask it a lot of questions. I've used it a lot for writing because that's not necessarily something that I'm very good at. And then when it comes to work and, creating imagery for reports and things like that. So it just sort of pops up every once in a while.
So, April, truthfully, I need the truth from you. Look into my eyes. When you first saw the power of DALL-E and OpenAI or one of its equivalents, how did you feel? Deep down in your stomach, how did you feel about it?
I had a lot of feelings. I did. It was a lot all at once because, not only working with a team of futurists who are talking about all the signals and the innovation, everything that they see going on out in the world, but also seeing friends and family sort of experimenting with it and their opinions and their excitement was a little scary. I mean, it felt like what my friends and family were doing, where they were creating portraits of themselves,
Yeah.
different artistic styles. And I thought to myself, wait, why? They know I can draw that, right? That was the first thing I thought. It's like,
Yeah.
that person's never asked me to paint them. And I have, I've been an artist for a very long time. And that occasionally a cousin will be like, can you do a portrait of me or my child or whatever? And I thought, why are they so excited? I don't get the same excitement for me.
So how has your feelings changed from a year ago to today?
Well, I've learned a lot more about it. And I think that comes from really being curious and embracing, trying to continue to learn and to not just turn away something that's new and scary first thing, because it's new and scary. I've realized, I mean, I've watched different artist groups going to the courts to get some legal action for protecting their artwork. There was an entire group that came out almost, I would say, within a week or two, and they started a GoFundMe to basically get the people and the information and the lawyers together to go and take this on, because they were allowing artists' names to be a part of their prompting. So you would say, in the style of
April Harris.
Yeah, and an artist's name. And they had trained their systems on these people's artwork, and nobody was told. And so that was huge. And of course, the artists that they took their artwork are professionals. They're going to be the higher ups, the ones that people collect, and they're making their living off of this art. And it was devastating. And they were just terrified of seeing their own artwork out there. Well, it wasn't their own artwork, it was a rendition of it. It was like a copy. And they were like, I didn't do that, but it looks like mine. And
Yeah.
people email it to them and say, hey, is this yours? I would like to buy this. And they're like, wait a minute, that that looks just very similar, like
Yes.
almost 80% like this particular drawing or painting or whatever. And that was super scary. But I've since learned that Adobe, which is a major, software company for graphic designers and artists in the creative industry. I mean, everything from movie production to, your small town printer would use Adobe. They have actually taken the time to sort of create their own data set and gotten permission and actually hired artists to go out and take photographs of things and get permission for their art to be used. And they've also set up a lot of blacklist words where you can't put in Taylor Swift drinking a Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
It will not let you create images of her or videos of her or something like that. And so also there's so many words. It's like, murder, drugs, or whatever it is that they have deemed inappropriate. They've already built that into their system. Part of the issue there is that their Adobe Firefly is what theirs is called. It's not as far along as the ones that just scrape the internet.
Got it.
And got, just massive amounts of information. So that is really, I think, commendable, and the way it should have been done in the first place. And it makes me wonder if If Midjourney and Open AI had done it that way in the first place, it probably wouldn't have been as scary and as threatening
Yeah.
to such a huge community of people. And so I just love that Adobe did that. But of course, Adobe's thinking about their customers. The creative industry is everything for them. So that's something that I've really been excited about. And it's built into my software. So everything that I'm video editing with, photography, photos, stock photography, I'm able to do all of that in the software that I already use. So it's very convenient.
And on a platform that's respecting the artist, that's beautiful. So how have you seen the artist sentiment evolve over the last year from where, the initial like, oh, no, what's all this, to today? How has that changed? You interview a lot of artists on your podcast, Art Talk with April. So I'm just what are you hearing today?
Well, I've actually seen a lot more artists using it in the way that you would do sort of reference imagery, or as an artist, a lot of times you'll search for royalty free images or stock images of people in specific positions or animals or whatever it is that you create, right? And so with generative AI, you can have a concept in mind and kind of play around with what works best, and then get a bunch of images and sort of work off of that to create something on your own. So it's sort of like you're getting to kind of create a mini version or a prequel to what you're going to end up making. I've seen a lot of artists doing that, and some artists have actually sort of uploaded their own artwork to get the same styles and that kind of thing. But I have to say, there's still a lot of no AI out there. There are people who are very, very much against it. But I think it has a lot to do with how those companies, went about releasing it to the public,
Got it.
but also like how people are talking about it when they use it and sort of claiming it as their own in a way that, they're using Midjourney, which has taken from other artists. So it just feels like a lot of, I don't know, like just stealing constantly to some people. And it's very disheartening. And so there have been, no AI Facebook groups coming up in my feed. I actually joined one
Yeah.
to see what people were talking about,
A
because it
bunch
was,
of happy people there, weren't there?
oh yes, I see lots of, they share what people are doing.
Wow. And that's something a lot of us don't dig into to really recognize that. Let me ask kind of a follow-up question to that then, April. Some people out there just do art for a hobby. Others are dependent upon it for their income and their careers, as your career has led you into, through art and everything. Are you hearing about any kind of financial impact that generative AI is causing artists?
I'm not hearing of anything locally in my community, or for people that I know, but I am a part of several artist groups and forums. And particularly, one group that I'm in is for illustrators, children's book illustrators, publishers, and writers. And that is an industry that is being really hit pretty hard, as far as people are literally writing books, illustrating them, and then self-publishing them on Amazon. And they're going fast. And you can literally go onto Amazon and search for children's books, and you can kind of see the difference. You can
When there's
tell.
four hands and six fingers and
Yeah, and it'll be, the technology has gotten a little further where you can create the same character in different positions, but it's still not quite there. And there's a lot of arguing over that. And the authors are wanting to generate their illustrations instead of having to pay for the illustrators. And there's a lot of arguing over that.
Oh, I bet. I could see that creeping into a lot of different areas over time as things get easier, as the software platforms get more powerful and more all-knowing. I could imagine a time where you could just say, yeah, that same character I used last time, put them in the desert, not the jungle this time. Things
Yeah, have
like
a whole
that.
series.
Yeah, and then it just does it all for you. So you're part of a futurist team here at TCS. For those that don't know TCS is the second largest consulting company in the world with over 600,000 employees. April and myself are two of them. April works for the future business team as I do, and she makes us all look so good with her art. So let me just ask you for your perspective on this, April. If we look ahead, let's say 5 years in the future, how would you anticipate this art scene, the art environment, the art profession changing in the next 5 years as a result of all these developments?
Well, the way I kind of look at that is through my own experience as a digital artist and drawing and painting on my iPad with the Apple Pencil. When that first came out, that was the new bad guy.
Yeah.
And it's very similar to that because in competitions and galleries, people would put it into their requirements that you don't have digital art, it cannot be digital art. Right
Mm.
now, it's no AI. Like you cannot enter competitions, you cannot get into galleries. I myself had sold some art in an art show and they asked me, knowing it was digital, they were like, is this AI? And I could tell that they were going to turn away if it was, but thankfully it was not.
Yeah.
And I sold it. But I think eventually it's going to just be more ex- just accepted. And just like digital drawing is now with the iPad, it's just going to become more normalized. And I think more people will get comfortable with it. I'm hoping that there will be more regulations around it and protect artists, but
Yeah.
also companies and I don't know, influencers and politicians and people like that. I think that's very scary and very important. And I hope that that comes about sooner rather than later. I think it's just going to make the graphic designers and illustrators work much more accelerated and faster. Adobe is just putting so many different tools that are AI generated tools like, draw a logo. I mean, there is literally a logo tool, and that's a whole industry in itself that, there are some very high end studios that's all they do is branding design. And now you can go into Illustrator and get a set of 6 logos and, you can edit them and, do whatever. But that's now. I really cannot. I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
As you were speaking, April, I was thinking to myself, this must also expand dramatically the non-artist their capability to become artists, right?
Sure, absolutely.
I have a whole Instagram account called Futurist Humor,
Yes, you do.
which is just futurist humor using cavemen.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, that's only possible because I'm no artist because of generative AI. I wonder how many, tens of thousands of other people are suddenly becoming artists.
Oh, there are, especially on Instagram, there are a lot of AI artists coming to the table. And I would suggest just searching in Instagram for hashtag AI art, and you'll
Yeah.
see there are people who are making money off of it and they're building their style. They'll have their images all look the same, just like an artist would have a style and a voice. It's really cool. But at the same time, it's overwhelming because I mean, it just took off like that. And I guess the non-artist, it's probably liberating and just makes you feel like you can just go and make the things you want to make. That's
Absolutely.
exciting.
Now, I have one last confession here, too. I've actually written a book, but the book is for one person, and it's Ava, my granddaughter. Yeah. So I created, it has like 60 images in it, and it's a
Yeah.
story that I made for an audience of one. And she
Oh, that's so
loves that.
sweet.
She just loves
Yeah.
that. Anyway, so I could see that there's the ability to make us non-artists be that. So the last question, how many times have you watched the Taylor Swift concert?
Well, what you don't know, Kevin, I don't think you know this, but my 4-year-old daughter is a huge Swiftie, and she has had me and my husband and my son watching Taylor Swift back to back to back to back.
That's too funny. I don't have little kids. I have, grown-up kids,
Yeah.
and they do the same thing, April.
Do
I
they
think
get on
I
top of the table and sing and dance? Now that is a question
no,
because my
they're not
daughter
doing that.
does.
They're not doing that. April, I want to thank you so much for sharing your insight, your expertise. And again, April hosts the podcast Art Talk with April. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. It was such an honor to talk to you today.